Homer Hickam grew up in the mining towns of West Virginia. Today, he wants to do some serious mining on the moon. But before you call him a crackpot, consider that he spent his youth not underground, but building rockets with his friends. And Homer went on to become an aerospace engineer for NASA, and his life story is told in the Hollywood movie October Sky. Now, his new novel, Crater, explores the idea of mining energy resources on the moon. Homer, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me, Rick.
So is the whole idea of going to the moon to mine it for energy resources, is that a profit motivation, or is that a way that you can see us solving our energy crisis here on Earth?
Well, maybe both. The cool thing is when the Apollo astronauts came back with all their rocks, we noticed they were covered with dust, and somebody said, "What's in that dust?" And they started looking at it, and they discovered that it was this, embedded with this isotope called helium-3, which is a product of the solar wind. We don't get it on Earth because we've got a magnetic field, we've got an atmosphere, but the moon doesn't. So for billions of years, it's just been sweeping up all this wonderful helium-3. And people, well, so what? It turns out that helium-3 is the perfect fuel for fusion reactors. We have a severe shortage of fusion reactors right now, but someday if we're really interested in clean energy, fusion is going to be the way to go. And there already are reactors that are out there, but not commercially viable yet, but they will be, and when they do, we'll want helium-3. Makes sense to me that somebody's going to see a way to get up to the moon and get that helium-3 and bring it back. The trick is to make it economical. So an infrastructure has got to be built, like the Transcontinental Railroad 100 and some years ago, to get back and forth to the moon.
So the key, though, the key dilemma we're dealing with is that NASA has just shut down our space program, that we've mothballed the shuttles and told the astronauts to go get other jobs.
Yeah.
So in the absence of the federal government taking the lead on this, it is really now up to the private sector. So is that what it's going to take, the commercial sector, the private sector funding this?
Well, I think so. We're at this crossroads right now. For some reason, the federal government decided that human spaceflight is not particularly important to them. That's very clear. Or they would have had a follow-on successor to the shuttle. They didn't, and they were going to let commercial folks pick it up. But they weren't sure that was going to happen, but thank goodness. My mom used to say God looks after fools, drunks in the United States of America. We had Elon Musk and SpaceX especially that were building this whole series of rocket launchers, which, by the way, their engine is based on a NASA design called Fast Track. So
which cool. You might have had something to do with.
I had a little bit to do with it. And it's a very simple little engine, and they made it even better, a lot better, as a matter of fact. So they are in like a perfect position to make the business case to let them take over flying Americans into space. And I say, why not? In
your book, Crater, it's a novel. It's, it's following the path of the pioneers who are actually going to the moon and doing the mining operations. Yeah. How much of the content of your book is based on science that currently exists as opposed to what needs to be developed?
Scientifically, it's quite accurate. I had to figure out how to mine helium-3 because there's nothing out there on how to do it. But I have a mining engineering background too, so I was able to figure that out. Crater is a 16-year-old boy. There's no child labor laws on the moon, by the way. I'm sorry, 120 years in the future. So he works in the helium-3 mine. I've got Crater's town is called Moontown. Somebody said it was Colwood on the moon, where I grew up in Colwood. It's out in the Alpine Valley, and which is 1,000 miles from Armstrong City, the main settlement there. I wonder who Armstrong City is named after. And Crater has to actually travel the 1,000 miles to get to Armstrong City. That's part of the plot. He's a convoy scout carrying helium-3 across the moon. So I got to look at all the features on the moon and try to figure out what Crater would actually see as he's going across, and what technologies he's working with. And one of them is a biocomputer called a gilly. A gilly is Gaelic and Irish for helper. And the gilly is actually a blob of slime mold cells. That is a biocomputer. Look up slime mold, interesting stuff. The gilly talks to Crater, though it has no mouth. It watches him, though it has no eyes. It listens to him, though it has no ears. It stands up and runs, even though it has no legs. I never quite described the gilly, but every young person and old person who've read Crater, they say, I want a gilly, and so do I. That's why I invented it. Someday we're going to go to the moon, and there's going to be people like that founded Colwood, these capitalists that come out of nowhere, and all of a sudden they're building these company towns, and that's what I see happening on the moon. It's going to be like it's going to be, I wish I could live long enough to go there. It's going to be fun.
So we're going to be going west, young man, on the next century.
It's going to be the raw frontier on the moon.
We're going to be going not quite north, but literally straight up. Homer, thank you so much.
Thank you, Rick.